My rare and unusual symptoms in multiple sclerosis. Number 7 being the craziest one. Let's go. Hi, I'm Cliff, and this is Life with Multiple Sclerosis, or as I like to call it, Life with MS. I was diagnosed in 2018, though in hindsight, I've probably had MS most of my life. It has been a quest indeed. I have the range of typical symptoms, including fatigue and optic neuritis, the floaty things in your eyes, losing vision, all that stuff, and all the other normal stuff. But there are the unusual symptoms that hit people with multiple sclerosis that are usually unique to the individual. I have a range of those. I've put together a list of 7 unusual MS symptoms that I have that I want to go over with you because they're really quirky, quite strange. And what I've tried to do is find some studies also that support that while these are unusual, they are not completely unheard of. When I say unusual, it can mean things like when I'm in a room full of people with MS and I can mention this specific symptom, nobody can relate. Well, they can kind of relate, but they don't necessarily experience that symptom. So what are these? Here's a list of 7, and number 7 being the craziest one. That one's very unusual, and I've never met anybody else with it, but I did find studies on it, so it exists outside of my friend bubble. And just a note, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a healthcare provider, I'm just a bald guy on YouTube with multiple sclerosis trying to make my way through this crazy disease. Let's get started with that list. Also, if you don't mind, like, share, and subscribe, and also comment. I love to hear what you guys have to say, and it helps the algorithm keep me from getting buried in the universe and making sure these aren't deep, dark secrets and that other people can learn from them. All right, let's get started on that list. Number 1, tailbone pain. It is unusual, but it's not completely unheard of. And of course, we know that MS often affects the spine and the back. And in fact, one of my first symptoms was really bad back spasms. But recently, around the age of 45 and beyond, I've had really bad tailbone pain. And I used to think it was from doing too many physical activities and sitting on seats for too long or, mountain biking too much. That's not the case. This is definitely related to my multiple sclerosis. So quickly, let's check out an article I found about MS and tailbone pain, and I will also link all of these articles in the description below. So this is about MS and tailbone pain, and it has some management tips on here, and this is on mymsteam.com. And here they are talking about symptoms like aching or shooting pain in the tailbone area. I have that. Pain that worsens when standing up from sitting. Actually, mine gets worse when I'm sitting for too long. Pain from sitting, there you go, especially for long periods. I do not do long periods of sitting. I cannot handle that. Other back pain, constipation pain. Yep, that would definitely do it. Okay, so, and it says tailbone pain may be related to multiple sclerosis and could be a symptom. So that's number 1, tailbone pain. Number 2, difficulty breathing. And I find this to be especially true in not only stressful situations, but heat. Heat really brings this out. And often people will look at me and I'll say, I'm having a tough time breathing right now. And they're like, well, you're kind of in shape. Why are you so winded? If it's like over 80 degrees outside, I find it incredibly difficult to breathe for any length of time. And I realized that this wasn't a very common situation with this disease when I talked to my first couple of neurologists, and I would tell them, I really actually have a lot of problems breathing. And they would say, well, it's actually the MS hug. And that could be true. But the MS hug I've experienced is farther down around the rib cage. And this is more breathing related. And I don't have the rib cage pain when I have the breathing issues. It's just like I cannot catch my breath. And the hotter I get, the harder it is to actually breathe. So is it a thing? Well, according to my research, yes, it is. Let's take a look. And here we go. And this is on the National Multiple Sclerosis Society website. I love their stuff. It is very factual and based on evidence. And here we go. It says breathing issues and multiple sclerosis. Let's move this over a little bit so you can see it. Respiratory problems due to multiple sclerosis. Respiration or breathing is primarily under the control of the autonomic or automatic nervous system. This is part of the central nervous system that controls vital functions, such as the heartbeat and respiration without your conscious thought. It is unusual for multiple sclerosis to affect the autonomic system, and for this reason, it's uncommon for breathing problems to occur in MS as direct result of loss of autonomic control. However, it's something that I've run into just a couple of people that have the same thing. No, shortness of breath is not usually a direct symptom of MS. If you are experiencing shortness of breath, go to the emergency room. Breathing problems that occur with MS present differently than what you might call shortness of breath. People with MS experience a tightening of the chest called the MS hug. Okay, so while I agree with this article for the most part, I can tell you that probably about 3.5 months ago, I ended up going to the emergency room when I couldn't breathe. And I could breathe. It just felt like I could not breathe. I took a 2.5 hour MRI scan session, and at the end of the day, they basically said, "Oh, it's your MS." So there you go. What they call it is intercostal spasms. So the intercostal muscles are the ones around your rib cage and stuff. And when they start spasming, it can really not leave a lot of room to actually get your breath. And that can cause a panic attack, and that can cause all kinds of issues. So yeah, while, as you can see here, a lot of people will say MS does not cause shortness of breath. I can tell you from a patient's experience that it does, or at least difficulty breathing, maybe not shortness of breath, just very heavy labored breathing. That is my situation. All right, let's move on. Okay, number 3. This one is crazy weird, and I've never met anybody else with this specific symptom: loss of taste. And this is just a bizarre one. This one comes and goes, and it has been more recent as of late. There will be days or weeks that I can go with not much taste, but it's usually around a specific flavor like salt or sweet or bitter. The food, and I like to cook. I like to make lots of like really yummy Mediterranean dishes that have very distinct savory flavors. When I have this thing going on, I will often oversalt the food, and my wife will tell me, "Wow, dinner was great, but it was way too salty," and I couldn't taste it at all. So now I do a thing called the chip test, and she likes these particular types of nacho chips, tortilla chips, that are super, super salty most of the time for me. And I'll take one out of the cabinet and I'll pop it in my mouth if I think I'm having a day where I'm not tasting much salt. If it doesn't taste like salt, then I know there's something going on, because these chips are so salty, I can literally brush the salt off of the chip and see it visually. So, lack of taste. It's weird. Is it a thing? Well, according to my research, yes, it is. Let's take a look. Okay, here we are again on the National Multiple Sclerosis Society website, and it says loss of taste. A loss or diminished sense of taste in multiple sclerosis is more common now than it once was believed to be. Changes in taste can come and go for a person living with MS. Different types of taste, saltiness, savoriness, bitterness, sourness, and sweetness may not be affected the same way. So again, this stuff is linked below, but yeah, so it's a thing. A loss of taste. Have you had the loss of taste thing happen to you if you have MS? Can you comment below? I'm really curious to see how many people view this video and have any of these symptoms. I appreciate any feedback, and I think the community really likes reading the comments. Okay, so loss of taste. It's a thing. Let's move on. Number 4, Pseudobulber Effect. What in the world is that? Well, it's hard to describe, but basically, it's the inability to control your laughter or your crying. And this is something that affected me as even when I was in high school. Maybe it was just hormones, maybe it wasn't. No, actually, what happened was I ended up going to a friend's funeral, and way back when, and during the funeral, I just broke out in laughter like crazy. I could not control it. And I was like, have I lost my mind? There's nothing funny about this funeral. I was just devastated by the loss of my friend. But for some reason, like I just started laughing about it, and uncontrollably. Well, years later, I would be diagnosed with MS. And I will have to say that while the pseudobulbar effect has greatly diminished in me, it is not completely gone. My wife will often find me laughing uncontrollably in the kitchen, and anything can start it. It's really hard to stop. Luckily, I don't have the crying situation. The pseudobulbar effect also has pathological crying, where you just kind of lose your crap for a couple of days, but you could be feeling great, but you're just crying over something. So is it a thing? Yeah, well, most of us know about this, but let's look at the studies. Okay, so this is on mstrust.org.uk, and it talks all about the pseudobulbar effect, pathological laughing and crying. And some people with multiple sclerosis find that they experience sudden episodes of uncontrollable laughter and or crying in inappropriate times. I would think laughing at a funeral is probably a very inappropriate time, unless it's a funny funeral and the person had a great sense of humor. Yeah, that was pretty inappropriate. Or which are unrelated or out of proportion to their current mood. And this can happen. I can feel really shocked about something or really sad about something and just laugh about it. And yeah, it's not laugh therapy. It's quite unfortunate. This can happen if MS lesions have occurred in the area of the brain that controls your emotions. These excessive emotion symptoms are known by a number of names, including the Pseudobulber Effect, pathological laughing and crying, emotional lability, emotional incontinence. That's hilarious. Sorry. And emotionalism. And I will link this below. You can read more about it. So if you think you have this, don't feel bad. It's really quite unfortunate, but it is not as well known as a symptom. So it is an unusual symptom as MS. But the more people I talk to, the more I seem to realize they have it. So it's just not as pronounced. Okay, let's move on. Number 5 is super vivid dreams. Now, these have been happening more recently in the last 4 to 5 years than they used to be. But I think it might be a combination of the drugs that I use to manage my multiple sclerosis. I don't know what's causing them, but they are insanely vivid. And it may not also help that I don't sleep much with my spasms and stuff. So when I do sleep, I seem to have these crazy dreams. I don't know. It's just bizarre. Is it a thing? Well, according to some articles I found, yes, it is. Let's take a look. Okay, how multiple sclerosis affects sleep and dreams. Now, it's hard to quantify and qualify this because obviously we can't see other people's dreams. They can only tell us about it for what they remember. There are several articles out there about people talking about their dreams. And for these people, they talk about, I never have to use my walker in my dreams. And my dreams involve all sorts of activities I've never done. For me, it's more abstract than that. In some of my dreams, I can run again. I used to love to run. I can't run anymore very well. I can run down to the end of the driveway and back, but I used to run like 10 miles, no problem. My dreams are a little bit more like a Salvador Dali painting, like the clock melting off the pedestal and all the colors and all the wavy lines and stuff. They're very, very strange. I have a background in production, so I'm used to thinking about scripts and stories, and I am a storyteller. So maybe that has something to do with it. But the dreams have gotten weirder with time, or I'm just getting older. Who knows? This one has been from the get go always an issue, and it is shoulder blade cramps. When I start getting too hot, the muscles between my shoulder blades on my back start cramping really, really bad, and it gets horribly uncomfortable. And then the skin on top of it starts itching like crazy. So during the summertime, when the sun's beating down on my back or it's just too hot outside, you'll see my wife scratching my back a lot. She'll be following me around and doing that because my back is itching uncontrollably, but the muscles are like, I think they're spasming or something. Anyway, it was one of the first symptoms that I noticed that no one could explain. I would talk to my neurologist about it, and I would say, I've got a lot of like cramping between my shoulder blades, and it seems to only happen when it's hot. And I've narrowed it down to heat and multiple sclerosis. And it is actually kind of helpful because it gives me an early indicator of me overheating before my vision starts going out. So is it a thing? Well, yes, it is. Let's take a look at the article. Okay, here we go. We're on WellMed, which is healthcareassociates.com. And this is May 26th of 2023. It says back pain between shoulder blades. And if you come down there, it talks about your common things like soft tissue injuries, spinal fractures, arthritis. But at the very bottom here, and I found some with it at the very top, it can talk about chronic health conditions like fibromyalgia, Parkinson's disease, and multiple sclerosis. All right, let's move on. And number 7, the strangest symptom that I have, and I have never met anyone else with it. But I know you're out there. Please comment below if you can identify with this. Are you ready? Are you ready? Heightened sense of smell. This one is wacky dacky, and it gives me like a 2-day cautionary zone to let me know that I have a flare coming. So what do I mean? Like, how do I know? If we go to like, say, Walmart or Costco or any of those places, and I walk in there and I can smell perfume or I can smell someone's BO from like 30 feet away, it's like a huge siphon in my nose and it's just sucking up all the odors and I can smell everything. People stink. I got to tell you that. People are very smelly at that level. And I don't even know how dogs deal with it because like I have a dog whose nose is supposedly 10,000 times stronger than a human sense of smell. I don't know how she deals with us. We're just sneaky people. And at first, it totally freaked me out. And then I realized, oh, this is like related to some type of a flare I'm going to have. And I've noticed, and I've tracked it over time in the last 2 or 3 years, if I'm having one of those days where I can smell everything, then I got to be careful because the next day or two, I got a flare coming and it's going to wipe me off my feet for a couple of days. So it is an early warning signal, which is kind of nice, kind of like the shoulder blades thing. So it gives me a little bit of a heads up and I can plan accordingly. But is it a thing? Well, I found some articles. Let's take a look. This is on healthline.com, and the medical terminology for it is hyperosmia. Hyperosmia. Some neurologic conditions have been linked to hyperosmia, and that includes multiple sclerosis. There we go, folks. So it's nice to have access to the internet and basically figure out that I'm not completely losing my mind, because when I mentioned this to one of my previous neurologists, I said, I can smell everything days before I'm going to have a big flare up. He would say, well, it could just be your allergies. Well, my allergies don't happen in the middle of winter, I don't think. And also, a couple days after that, I usually feel a big flare up come up and I can't see out of one eye. And, the whole MS standard symptoms show up. So, this is a thing. Now it's your turn. I want to know what you experience. And what does that mean? Well, it's one of those symptoms that when you tell somebody else about it that also has MS, they look at you like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Comment below. Also, subscribe and like if you don't mind, if you found this valuable. I love building this community. Everything you guys say in the comments is almost so enlightening, if not educational, and it's fantastic. So keep them coming. I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS. And until next time, see you later.